A New Year's Fairy Tale. Once upon a time, in a faraway village, there lived a little girl with her mother. The girl's name was Lynn. Mother and daughter loved each other to the moon and back. But with all that love and care from mother, Lynn used to feel very lonely. And that was because the village where they lived was so small that there weren't any children for her to play with and to make friends. Rumor had it that many years ago something happened in Mother's life that left her deeply hurt, and since then she held on to that heavy memory and wanted to stay away from people. And so, when Lynn was born, Mother decided to move and settle somewhere as remote and secluded as possible, in the middle of nowhere. It was all to protect her daughter from strangers and from any hurt that people could cause her according to her mother's thoughts. But the little girl was growing up and wanted to have friends. Several times she tried to travel to the neighboring villages to find children of her age. Lynn tried to talk to her mother about it, but her mother would say, "I am here for you, and you are here for me. We are good together. Why would you need anyone else? Do you not love me anymore?" Lynn didn't want to upset her mother, and would immediately assure her that she certainly loved her very, very much, and that she didn't need anyone else. But deep inside, she yearned for new encounters and new life experiences. It felt almost suffocating in the tiny world where she and her mother lived. She would often go to the seaside and sit on the shore daydreaming and thinking what to do. She did not want to upset her mom, and she also wanted to find friends. And then she had an idea. She secretly wrote a letter. And in that letter, she talked to invisible friends. She wrote how lonely she felt, how she desired to meet them and to become friends. Then she put her letter in an empty milk bottle, sealed it tight, and shot it into the sea as far as she could. She was confident that her message would reach distant shores and might even come back to her with an answer from an unknown country. However, there was no return address in the letter because she didn't know her own address, and she couldn't ask her mom. But she believed in miracles. Time passed. Her letter was floating and drifting further and further away, carried by the mighty waves in the ocean, and led by the winds into various directions. And one day, on a sandy beach, empty and awash after the receding tide, a girl, whose name was Anne, noticed a glistening object in the sand. It was a milk bottle, gently thrown to her feet by a mighty tide. The bottle was tightly sealed, exactly how Anne imagined a bottle with a message inside, which sailors from adventure stories throw into the sea from a desert island after a shipwreck. She never thought she would open one such bottle herself. When she picked up the bottle, she realized there was a letter inside it, Again, she felt like she was in an old adventure story. Her heart was racing. What if the shipwreckage happened in the last century, and she would not be able to help sailors on the island in the middle of the ocean? These were her thoughts. But it was a letter from a girl whose name was Lynn. The letter told a simple story of a very lonely girl of her age who lived far away across the ocean. Anne instantly decided to find Lynn and to cheer her up. It should be said that Anne had a lot of friends in many places in the world. They were her pen friends. She wrote her friends about the letter, which she came by in such a surprising manner. They all replied back, saying they wanted to be friends with Lynn. And so, one beautiful day, they all got together. Anne from France, Francesca from Italy, Pedro from Spain, Jane from England, Solveig from Norway, Michael from the USA, Daphne from Israel, Marcella from Argentina, Hanna from Ukraine, Tsvetanka from Bulgaria, and set off on a long journey. They didn't know which way to go, but they knew that Lynn lived on the other side of the sea. They wished to let that lonely girl know that they cared for her, and that wish inspired them to overcome the perils of the long journey. Meanwhile, Lynn continued feeling sad and unaware that she was in for a surprise. The holiday was coming, but the beautiful Christmas and New Year tree decorated by her mother was no joy. Instead, she was thinking of all children who were going to celebrate this magic holiday together. They would be dancing around the sparkly and colorful Christmas tree. She wanted the same, but she knew that it was impossible. And again, she dipped into a deeper sadness until she became sick. She was in bed, and no matter how much her mother looked after her, she wasn't getting better. Her mother worried very much, as she couldn't understand what happened to her daughter. The village was so remote and secluded that one had to walk many, many hours to the nearest doctor, and Mother couldn't leave Lynn alone. So what did the children do? They kept walking for 3 days. Then they realized that they needed to cross the sea, and then to continue looking for Lynn. It was the New Year Eve. Imagine how children were surprised when at that very moment they came across the snow fairy, who could fulfill their wish. She said, "I will help you, children. I will give you a magic plane. It will take you exactly where you need to go. But remember that Lynn's mother is a witch. You should be very careful when you reach her territory." Children promised the snow fairy that they would be very careful. They boarded on the magic plane, filling the plane with laughter and joy, and took off. When the plane landed, children found themselves in a snow-covered forest. "This must be the place where the girl lives," suggested Jane. "But how shall we find her house? Where shall we go?" asked Pedro. Nobody knew the answer. Then children decided to walk straight ahead. They were walking through the forest when they saw a lady. "Hello, madam. Can you tell us where a girl called Lynn lives?" asked the smallest of the children, Francesca. The woman looked at the children, and her face became angry as her eyes were moving from child to child. "Oh," quietly whispered Hannah, "it seems like this is her mom." And that was true. It suddenly became very dark in the forest, and freezing and scary at once. Little Francesca burst into tears. "It's all my fault. We're all going to die, and we will never see Lynn. She will not make friends with us, and we will never know her." But Anne, being the eldest among children, calmed her down. "Oh, it's not your fault, dear. You didn't know who it was. Everything will be fine. Good always wins." And then children heard the Snow Fairy's voice from afar. "Hold hands. The warmth of your hearts will help keep you warm, and the light of your kindness will dissipate the darkness, and you will be able to move forward." Indeed, as soon as children held hands, the cold moved away, and their path felt brighter. And so they went on and on until they saw a little shabby hut. There was a light inside, and children could see a Christmas tree shining brightly with colorful electric garlands. Children knocked on the door, but the girl couldn't open it. She was sleeping in bed, very tired and weak. Then Anne pushed the door, and, surprise, the door was open. Anne and other children were so happy. When they entered the hut, they saw Lynn sleeping in bed. Tsvetanka came close to the bed and talked to her quietly. "Lynn, wake up. It's time to meet guests." The girl opened her eyes. Seeing so many unfamiliar faces, she was very surprised. "Who are you?" she asked. "We received your letter," children said in chorus. "We all want to be your friends." Lynn's face lit up as she heard this. "How is that possible?" the girl exclaimed. "It means my letter reached you. It reached you." "Yes, I fished it out of the water," Anne smiled. "And now we're all here to celebrate with you, and then we will invite you to visit us. You can stay at our homes in turn, and we will have a great time together," said Michael. Lynn was smiling, and then she cried. Those were tears of joy. And looking at her, children cried too, and she hugged them, and they hugged her. and they were so warm and happy together. And then children took out the candies and gifts that they had brought with them, and the real celebration began. When Lynn's mother returned home and saw her daughter healthy and cheerful, rejoicing with all the children, she was so happy that of course she didn't even think about kicking the guests out. And the children, seeing her mother, even though they knew that she was a witch, fearlessly took her by the hands and led her to dance around the festive tree. And then the mother's heart melted. She suddenly realized how many good people were out there in the world. She was so grateful to these children who came from afar and healed her beloved daughter. For the mother, it was the beginning of a new life. Life without fear. Life with faith in people, in goodness. Lynn's mother was laughing with tears of happiness in her eyes. This perhaps was one of the most fun and magical New Year holidays in her life and in the life of her daughter. Lynn and her mother moved to the city where Anne lived, and they lived happily ever after, never alone again, with their hearts open to giving and receiving kindness.